Absolutely one of my favorite solos from a Journey song. We're going to take a closer look at Neal Schon's solo in the song Lights. Now, I'm going to be focusing on the concepts behind the solo rather than the individual notes and where they appear on the fretboard itself. And before you learn any solo, it's really important to have a great understanding of the chords happening behind the solo. So let's take a look at that first. We have four measure phrases here. Our first one starts on B minor, and then we go down to G, and then we have 2 measures of D. And then our next 4 bars, B minor, G, D, and then hits on A, which lead into our next 4 measures, B minor, G, D, for 2 measures again. And then this is where things change a bit on the 4th phrase. We have B minor, and then C, and then we go back to D. And in this case, the C chord is actually a borrowed chord. C is not diatonic to the key of D major. What we would typically find in D major is a C sharp diminished chord. But in this song, we have a C major triad, which is derived from the D minor scale. So we'll see how he deals with that here in a bit. Mostly we find Neal Schon using the D major pentatonic scale in this solo, which could also be thought of as the B minor pentatonic scale. But to keep everything straight in my brain, I like to match my major tonalities with major scales and my minor tonalities with minor scales. So I'm going to refer to this as D major pentatonic. Now, his opening phrase, after a dramatic slide down the fretboard, he starts his phrase on the F sharp, the 3rd of the D chord. The band is building on D to get into the solo. And he just works his way up stepwise up the D major pentatonic scale. So he's connected in with the chord the band is playing, starting on F sharp, and then working up to a B, the 6th degree of the scale. I kind of like to slide into that. And that kind of sets me up to play this big bend up here on the E up to an F sharp. Now, again, let's take a look at what's going on chord-wise with this. We're bending E up to an F sharp over a B minor chord. And the F sharp is the 5th of the chord. And we bend that. And we're kind of staying in this Albert King style box with D major pentatonic. Bending up to F sharp on the B minor, and resolving down to a D note over the G chord, and that D note is also the 5th of the G chord. Then he bends again. Now, this melodic device is really powerful here because he repeats the same phrase but then ends on a different note. And that really hooks in your audience when you're soloing. If you can repeat phrases and change them slightly, you're going to have more of the audience's attention. Now, not only does he change this note on another chord tone of D, he ends on A, and if we look, A on a D chord is also the 5th. So he's targeting the 5ths of each chord in this case. The F sharp on the B minor, the D on the G, and then the A on the D chord. In the next 4 bars, we're back to B minor, and he bends this D up to E and resolves. Again, the D on the B minor is the minor 3rd of the chord, and then it kind of plays this fast descending pentatonic lick, which is really kind of nice. It's a good lick to have in your bag of tricks. And that's all done on the B minor. And you could also take a look at this little lick that he's playing coming out of the B minor blues scale, because of this little twiddle that he does. But it's played really fast. It could also be thought of as a passing tone. And again, ending on a D note, which is the 5th of G. And then he plays another phrase to get into the D chord. Now he's on F sharp, the 3rd of the D chord, again connected with these chords. Even though he's just using the pentatonic scale, the notes that he's highlighting are so connected to these chords, which is one thing that makes this solo sound incredible. And then he ends this phrase on an E, right before the hits that the band does on A, leading back into B minor. And again, E is the 5th of the A chord. Now, on the next 4-bar phrase, we kind of do this Hendrix double stop thing. And if you look closer, he's double stopping on a B and a D note, which is outlining a tiny B minor chord. B and D are the root and the minor 3rd of our B minor chord. And this is his first big change outside of the D major pentatonic. Instead of playing in the D major pentatonic scale to do this, and ending this phrase on this F sharp, he actually ends this phrase on a G. And guess what chord that G comes up on? On our G chord, right? So we don't find a G note naturally in D major pentatonic. We have an F sharp note, but this case, he's kind of playing a little bit of G major pentatonic, or highlighting a G major triad with this little lick. Now comes probably my favorite run in this whole solo, this descending, skipping pentatonic thing. And this is a really great exercise to play. I kind of prefer to play it with my thumb pick and my finger. But you could also pick it as well. And what's happening, it's a sequence on a pentatonic scale. So rather than play the scale stepwise down, we're skipping a pentatonic note and then doubling back. For this stair step sequence. And that entire lick happens over the last 2 D chords in that 3rd 4-bar phrase. Now at this point, our chords shift. We play B minor, C, and then 2 measures of D, and his solo concept shifts dramatically. If you remember in the beginning of this video where I said that the C chord is borrowed from the D minor scale, he's going to shift his solo ingredients from D major to D minor to reflect that. So he goes up in the Albert King box of D minor pentatonic. Not only that, if we look at the notes that he's targeting, so this blues lick here is happening on the B minor. He's ending his phrase on D, which is the 3rd of B minor. When we go up to C, he's ending his phrase on G, which is the 5th of the C chord. And then getting back into our D chord to end out the solo, he's playing this bluesy 3rd. He's in the land in between F and F sharp. And then he ends his phrase on D. And once he gets to D, he shifts back into D major pentatonic and does another double stop. And this is outlining a D major triad. We have D and F sharp. And then he ends with a little B.B. King lick up here in D major pentatonic as well. So even though we are mostly staying within D major pentatonic with a little bit of an element of D minor pentatonic and a very small element of G major pentatonic, we can see that Neal Schon is very connected into the chords that he's soloing on top of. And this is what makes this solo one of those solos that if you play this song on a cover gig and you don't play the recorded solo, this is one of those moments where people probably throw their food and drinks at you because you didn't play the recorded solo. Use some of these concepts to improve your own soloing. My name is Matthew Dale, and I will see you on the next one.